Welcome back to Common Ground, an inside look at Suffolk County. I'm your host, Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Now, on this side of the program, we have one of the most ardent community activists that you would ever want to meet, and that would be Miss Monica Cannon. She is just a rock star. I mean, she really embraces and really is the true example, the real face of when they talk about community activism, and people just rolling up their sleeves and getting in the mix, particularly to keep our kids out of harm's way. That would be Monica Cannon. And so she's here today to talk to us about the Peace Collaborative, which she is the director of promotions, I believe, for that organization. And they've got a big basketball tournament coming up in the next couple of days. So without any further ado, Monica, thank you so much for coming on. It's always
thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. I love talking to you because I vibe off of your enthusiasm for community and your enthusiasm for people. Talk to us about the Peace, and I don't know why I keep saying police, but Peace Collaborative, and I'm assuming subliminally I'm thinking police and peace because they kind of go hand in hand, and when they don't, things can really go off the rails.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about that.
So the Peace Collaborative is about 12 organizations that have come together, and what we decided to do is instead of working separately on the same issue, which is helping our youth, we decided to come together to put on events to show the youth that as adults we can come together for one common goal, which is peace, and try to bring as many resources and education to them as we possibly can.
Okay. And so how did you get involved with that?
So I met a woman who was on the Peace Collaborative. Her name is Carolyn. She's a part of an organization called Community Call. And she invited me to come to one of the meetings at the mayor's inaugural ball. And I came, and I have an organization that I created on my own. It's called Back to School, Block Party for Peace. And they were interested in what I was doing. They liked my ideas, so they asked me would I be willing to be a part of it and help put on events for the youth. And I said, sure.
Why are you so steeped in community activism? Why is that important to you?
Well, mainly because my children have to grow up in this community. And I think my mindset was mainly that how can I expect anything positive to come out of the community if I don't put anything in? Also, being active helps me protect my kids from a lot of the things that happen in our community.
And how old are your kids?
16, 13, and 12.
And what is your community? You reference your kid. Where do you?
In Roxbury.
Roxbury.
Yeah,
Okay.
I live in Roxbury, in the Warren Gardens area, and I got involved after my home was a crime scene, and I decided that the streets couldn't have my children.
When you say your home was a crime scene,
so a young man was shot on my doorstep. And I couldn't get in my house for like 36 hours, and I happened to know this young man who grew up in the area, ate in my house. You know, he just was real active. I knew who he was. I knew his mom, and it bothered me to a level where I got angry, but I got angry and I got involved. And from that moment on, I just made the decision that as long as I'm involved and I can try to help bring peace to an area that didn't otherwise have it, I can help try to prevent some of the things that happen in that community.
So being a part of the Peace Collaborative, when you talk about activism in communities to keep kids safe and create safe havens, do you find that this is work that people readily come to, or do they come to it kind of kicking and screaming?
I think it's 50-50. Some people come willingly because they're just tired of everything that's happening with our youth, and they're frustrated and they really don't know where to turn, so they come looking for help. Others, you have to go to them, which is part of my model outside of the Peace Collaborative. A lot of the successes I've had with dealing with the young men in my area is because I was willing to go into situations that other people are not willing to go into. A lot of these men are drug abused. They abuse drugs, they abuse alcohol, and they kind of have lost hope and faith in a lot of things. And so I'm talking to young men who are high drinking. I go in atmospheres that other people wouldn't, but I have their respect. So I feel comfortable doing those things, but I'm also able to help them. And through me doing that, with the help of Reverend Liz Walker over at Roxbury Presbyterian, we were able to get a couple of the young men jobs, pay for their transportation, and ensure that they stayed employed for 2 years. So it works. They just need someone to reach out and help them.
So from your perspective, when you look at some of these gateway communities, principally populated by youth of color, either African-American, Latino, Cape Verdean, why do we have all this strife going on in those communities? Is it because of not poor schooling, not enough jobs, single-parent households? What is the dynamic there?
I think it's a combination of all of those things, but I think it starts with properly educating them. I'm all for us going into the schools when they're 5 and 6, not when they're teenagers. Our children are exposed to so much that is unaddressed. Right. And if you have a child who has witnessed one of their friends being shot and they never dealt with those feelings, and then they fester that anger and that trauma, it turns into anger and trauma. And sometimes they lose hope and feel like they have no choice but to defend themselves. We need to catch them before they get to that point. Broken homes. 85% of the homes in the urban areas are headed by women. There's no fathers in the household, but there's still help there. I mean, you know, I'm a single mom, but I advocate. I reach out to those who I know can help my boys in a situation where I can't be that voice of reason. But I think all of that plays a major issue, especially schooling. I mean, a lot of the education that's being taught is not catering to the fact of what these children go to before they reach to the schoolhouse. So if you're a child traveling to a Boston public school, your reality is that you have to travel through maybe 4 or 5 neighborhoods that are gang involved before you get to the schoolhouse. That trauma in itself is a deterrent from going to school and actually getting your education, because you done went through Iraq, quote unquote, just to get to the schoolhouse to get a proper education. Right. If we don't address the social compact, we can't tackle the violent compact.
You know, in my facility, a vast majority of the folks that are housed there are there because of some involvement with illegal substances or alcohol. 42% of my population presents with some form of mental illness, from the most passive to the most aggressive. And I say that as a backdrop to say that a lot of these folks really should be in programs for either substance abuse or mental health or diversionary program versus being incarcerated. But because of the scarcity of beds in those areas, they do something bad. It doesn't have to be that spectacularly bad, but bad. They're sent to jail. Talk to me about work or conversations you may have had with legislators to say, listen, we really need to look at this epidemic of drug use. We need to look at mental illness and how we really cater to folks that really should be in a mental health bed and not in a prison bed.
So I've done a lot of work with Reverend Liz Walker in regards to this, because we address the mental health and the trauma aspect. A lot of these people suffer from trauma and mental health issues that are never addressed, which leads to violent activity. Until we address the trauma, until we address the fact that it's something mental that's happening, we will never, we'll always be behind instead of in front of the situation. I spoke at the State House in regards to the gun reform bill. And, you know, there was a lot of opposition. Oh, you're trying to take our guns. No, be properly educated about what you're doing, because it shouldn't be that the guns that you're using are showing up in Roxbury. There's no boats to bring them in Roxbury. There's no planes that's dropping them off in Roxbury. So how are they getting there? Right. And I just think that people need to really just, you know, be real about what's happening. The African-American community and the Latino community are so reluctant to address mental health that we ignore it and we overlook it. And, you know, everyone has that one family member that they know is not too good upstairs, and they just choose to ignore it. No, get that person help. Reach out to someone and say, hey, you know, he's done some things that led me to believe that maybe mentally he's not all there, and what can I do to help? There's resources, but nobody's reaching out to get those resources.
You know, the thing that I find in politics is that, you know, a rally is good, a march is good, but you need concerted, sustained kind of focus. You know, I mean, even if that means every day, somebody is calling their legislator to say, hey, we really need some help here. And you know, one thing about legislators that I found out now, I'm in politics, but I'm in public safety. Legislators, you show up with a stack of cards or letters from folks in the community, and you do that several times a month, maybe once or twice a week. They take notice, but it has to, you have to have that kind of fire in your belly to make this happen every day or every week. And I find that sometimes these things are flash in the pan. People will do it now, they'll do it then, but they won't do it always. And until we really begin to do it always, we're going to be having this conversation again 5 years from now.
Absolutely. I speak a lot about selective outrage. where you're only outraged at that moment or because it's a racial issue. Let's not only be outraged about racial disparities. Let's be outraged that our children are killing each other. Let's be outraged that the murder rate is higher, even though shootings have gone down, because they're actually killing the folks who they want at this point. And let's be outraged at all of it. Let's go to the people that can actually make the changes, which is the legislative, and state, look, this is what's happening, this is what we need help, and this is what you can do for us. Until we come together and do that, we're going to continue to have this conversation. And it's 50 people doing the absolute same thing. Why can't we all come together and speak as one voice? That's the only way we're going to be heard, because it looks like a ball of confusion at this point. And we're not helping anybody. It's so many people who are falling through the cracks. One thing I've learned is that in my community, I was able to go to some of these boys' homes because I know their moms. And I was able to help them because I was honest. So many people have made them promises and stated that they were going to do things with no follow through, that there's a lack of trust when it comes to anybody, elected official, state official, community activists. There's a lack of trust. It's like, what are you going to promise me now? And so I'm very clear that I'm not promising you anything. This is what I can do, and this is what I can't do, and this is what I'm going to need you to do to meet me halfway. And I think if we approach it in that manner, we can be very successful, but it's going to take coming out of the offices and out of them cushiony seats and going into the neighborhoods that actually need the help and addressing the people that actually need the help.
I like that, though. Selective
outrage.
Selective outrage. I'm going to actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to steal that. I'm going to use that. I like that, selective outrage. So now you're doing some work with City Councilor Tito Jackson, and he has a community fund. Talk to us about that. What type of work is being done there?
So he's done some amazing things. I became a part of his community fund last year when he started his turkey fry, his annual turkey fry that he does at his home. And he blocked off the street and deep fried about 60 turkeys, and he gives it away to the community. But the community fund's main focus is giving back. And his goal is to reach out to those who have helped him along the way, as well as those who just need a helping hand. We did the turkey giveaway around Thanksgiving. We gave out over 4,000 turkeys. We were able to reach not only people in our community, but people came from East Boston, Medford, Charlestown. We delivered turkeys to the elderly who could not get to the Reggie Lewis Center, and we also delivered to those who were just handicapped and couldn't get down there, as well as gave them rides home. Right now, we just had a volunteer appreciation dinner last night, thanking our volunteers that volunteered for the turkey giveaway. Our next thing will be working on the turkey fry that's coming in May. And whatever else we can get involved in to try to help people and show them that there is concern there, they're not forgotten about. This is our community, and the only way that we're going to succeed is to do it together. So that's the goal. You
know, it's interesting because I was at both of those events. I was at Tito's Turkey Fry last year, and I brought my kids, and it really is. They block off the street, they've got the music, they've got presentations, and in a campaign year, it was interesting because all of the politicians, for the most part, showed up, you know, to say their thing. But they didn't just show up and leave. They actually showed up, and a bunch of them stuck around. Steve Grossman with the whole ice cream thing that he does. And they stuck around and really gave the community members an opportunity to voice what was on their mind about what was going on in the communities. And then you fast forward to Thanksgiving, and it's not just the turkey, it's the turkey and the fixins. I mean, it's everything. You know, and those bags are heavy. I had to lift some of those puppies to give to folks. But it really is interesting, and I think he gave away, what, 600, 700, 800, maybe 1,000 turkeys or something. It was a bunch of turkeys for Thanksgiving. So
we did a total of 4,000. 1,000 went to organizations.
4,000?
4,000. 1,000 went to organizations. We sectioned off some for the elderly, and then the rest was just for the public, whoever showed up. You know, a lot of times they go looking for help, and there's so much criteria around them getting the actual help that they give up. We made it as easy as possible. Just your name. Just your name.
Just your name, right.
And if you had a large household and you told us you have 6, 7 kids, you get 2 turkeys. So it's just based on what you tell us, and it's a trust factor. But the fact is so many people need help. The last thing they need is have to go through the rigmarole of trying to get that help. So we tried to make it as easy as possible.
Because if I remember correctly in talking to Tito and some of his volunteers, I believe they actually ran out of turkeys. And then I believe some benefactor came in, and they were able to get more turkeys. And then actually you folks delivered those turkeys.
So Teamsters, which is an excellent...
the union.
Yeah, the union. Pulled up an 18-wheeler and just dropped off 1,000 more turkeys. It was so many
No
people
kidding.
so many people that came together that day. It was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And once they dropped off the extra turkeys, nobody left without a turkey at that point.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the 3rd annual Peace Basketball Tournament.
So this tournament, we've been doing it for 3 years, and you know, basketball is the tool, but the goal is education, arts, and faith. Basketball is a tool to get you in the door, but we get you in the door and then we educate you. There will be a college fair. There will be tables set up for job readiness, gaining employment. There will be employers there. There's another program that just recently purchased a table to talk about youth who have quarries and trying to employ them and educate them to help them. And just mainly focusing on peace, but through education, through art, through staying out of the system. A lot of our kids are not properly educated, and you know, if you don't have the knowledge, you can't blame anybody. Right. So if I give you the information you need, then that helps you succeed. I can't blame you if you don't have the information. So part of this tournament is just getting all of the kids together and letting them know that we care as an organization. We're all fighting for a common cause. They are not forgotten about, and whatever we can do to help, that's the plan.
You know, so there's another community group that wraps education around basketball, no books, no ball.
Yeah, excellent organization.
Great, it's a great organization, Tony Richardson, but the arts and faith and basketball, actually, if I've heard about that before, I've forgotten. Talk to me about how important faith is when you talk about this total dynamic of reaching out and helping communities stay vibrant and strong.
Well, if anyone who does work with the youth knows they're looking for something to believe in. Right. And, you know, it's not one faith. It's whatever your faith is. When you have something to believe in, it causes you to push harder. It causes you to succeed and know that regardless of what happens, that your goal is there, it's reachable, it's not something that's so far-fetched that you can't touch it. Faith is everything with a lot of kids. We have a couple of teams that are faith-based teams, and they're like ministers from the church, but it's engaging with the youth off the record. So it's not a situation where it's politically correct. They're playing basketball with one another, they're interacting, they're talking, they're getting the perspective from the youth as to how we can help them. If we're able to put faith back into the community, then they'll be willing to reach back and help us. Right. But if you don't give anybody anything to believe in, you're leaving them out there. So a lot of these young men never had anything to believe in. Right. They've been disappointed for years. They've been told stuff by people and made promises, and they've lost their way. But if I reach out and I show you that I can do this and it's successful, then that gives you the faith that, okay, maybe if I take that next step, I can meet you halfway and I can be successful as well.
So you referenced a few moments ago single-parent households principally headed up by women. I grew up in a single-parent household in Harlem. What would you say to the brothers, to the young men, to the middle-aged, to the older men that can hear your words about the importance of having that male figure as a constant present in the household? What would you say?
I would let them know that you don't understand how important it is for you to be there. Regardless of what any woman says, she cannot be a dad. She cannot be a father. She cannot be the male motivation and presence that a child needs. It's not about money. Child support does not make you a dad. Weekly payments and paying health insurance does not make you a father. Show up. It's the free stuff that kids focus on. And for my kids, seeing their dad was more important than anything that he could have provided for them. I would say show up. Even if it's to a parent-teacher meeting, open house, pop up on them just to see that they're okay. But be a ever present when they need you, because when you have that presence in your life, it helps bring stability. Even if both parents are not in the same household, just to know that they have full access to their father or a male figure is crucial, especially for young men of color.
And we find that in my facility, upwards of 65% of my population looks like you and I, you know, Black and Latino. In a Commonwealth where that same demographic is about 18%. And so what's your thoughts on the political structure? I'm not talking about any one politician, but the political structure that allows so many of its citizens to be incarcerated, that allows so many of its citizens to live beneath the poverty line.
It's an injustice, and that's my opinion. A lot of times my fight is we incarcerate these young men, and then when they're released into nothing. Speaking just very bluntly, if I'm a drug dealer and I'm selling drugs and that's my source of income and you take that away, and I'm the person paying all the bills in the household that I'm living in, now there's a disparity there. You cannot take something away without giving something back. If I'm going to take it away, I'm going to give you an option to still receive income, but in a positive light, legally, and in a way that's going to benefit your family. When these young men come home, they need to come home to counseling. They need to come home to, some of them need somewhere to stay. You're releasing them with nowhere to stay, and then they drift back into the communities where they caused havoc. There needs to be some resources around once they get out of prison and out of that system to help them get to where they are. They're not enough. There are some, but there's not enough. These young men, a couple of young men in my neighborhood have come home from jail, and one young man lost his brother. You send him home on an ankle bracelet. He's in the house. He can't go anywhere, so he drinks and smokes every day because he has nowhere to go. The trauma of losing a loved one is not being addressed. There's no counseling services around him and his family. And then he comes off the ankle bracelet. Well, what do you expect to happen? He's going back into the prison system. Address the concerns before it turns into something fatal, because he's not just affecting his household, he's affecting a whole community. Right. We have to address it. If we're not going to help these people, everybody that goes to jail is not a threat to society. Some people made mistakes, and there's possibility for change. Right. When they come home, have the resources in place to have them be a productive citizen in that community. But if you're not sending them home to anything and you're expecting positive results, nothing from nothing leaves nothing.
So, you know, interesting you should say that, because it's my contention that the creature comforts, you know, home, shelter, food, clothing, job. What we're trying to do at the Sheriff's Department now is create avenues where a lot of that stuff is introduced to the men and women before they actually leave. Excellent. Because what we have found is when we leave, we may say, you can go and see X, Y, or Z. Oftentimes, under their own volition, they don't get there, you know, versus having that practitioner come in while Joe or Jane Public is still with us, establish a relationship so that when they transition out, they can make what I call a warm call versus a cold call to somebody that they know, somebody that they've established a relationship with. And we're looking at a dynamic that is going to be much more powerful in nature. In fact, what we're about to do now is working on creating a program called Family Matters, where we're going to take a percentage or a couple of my caseworkers and have those caseworkers deal with the families of the individuals that are with us. Because as you say, a lot of these homes have some sort of dysfunctionality going on. And so what we want to do is say, look, clearly, you're not family member. You're not under our jurisdiction. That said, if we have a good understanding of what the problem is, we can direct you to the social service agencies, and more than just direct you there, we will call there. We will say that this is the Sheriff's Department, and you know, Jane Public is coming over. We'd like you to take a meeting with her to help her with her situation. I think in the absence of doing that sort of thing, it's just kind of a vicious cycle. I believe that the hallmark of any vibrant community is how that community cares for the most compromised in that community. And it's not just people that are incarcerated, it's people that are our kids, our seniors, people from other lands, people that are unemployed. And I think that, you know, getting back to that, I think it was Hillary Clinton, that whole it takes a village thing. We have to wrap our arms around one another, because at the end of the day, I do believe that we are our brothers and sisters keepers. I do believe that if we have the wherewithal to help our fellow man and woman, that it's incumbent upon us. Not that we should just do it because we feel good about it. We should do it because we have to. And somewhere along the line, we've gotten away from that. Absolutely. We've gotten away from taking care of one another. And so now it's like things are feeding on itself, and it's almost like watching an implosion where this whole thing is just going to get wildly out of control.
Absolutely, I agree. You know, I grew up in a day and age where you were more afraid of the neighbors
yeah, when you get
telling your mom.
No, right?
And so much of that has changed. And so I try to instill that into my children. We couldn't say yeah, we had to say yes, ma'am, you know, and different things like that. And so my house has become a YMCA because in order to keep my son safe, all his friends are always at my house. But I do things with them. I show them that there's things outside of Roxbury. I take them on trips out of town. And no, I'm not rich, but if you are willing to do something, God will make a way. So I have about 10 young black men in my home every other day. But that's my opportunity to educate them, to let them know that this is not it. Roxbury is just not it. There's so much out there. I get involved on a school level. I'm the co-chair of the parent council at both my kids' school, to let them know that I'm here. You have that support. I'm involved. Life doesn't stop right here in Roxbury. You can go to college. You can get your education and be successful regardless of what anyone has said. And I think so many of our youth, as well as older people, just need to know that someone cares. There's so many people who are just, we call them forgotten youth, forgotten people. They're not forgotten. All you have to do is reach your hand out.
Listen, we're out of time, but I just want to say this to you, Monica Cannon, that you not only are a rock star, but we lift you up because you lift us up. And that's crucially important. And so if there's anything that the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department can do to aid you, and you know, we've talked about this before. Absolutely. Just let us know, and we will be there because you really are saving lives and you are making a difference.
Thank you.
And so thank you for coming on today. We'll definitely have you back again because there's so much more to talk about what you're doing. And that third annual basketball tournament, just really quickly, where and when? March
14th, the Reggie Lewis Track and Athletic Center. It's going to start at 10 a.m. and run till 5 p.m.
We'll be there.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on, love.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, that's it for today's program. We're out of time, so that means we're out of here. Until we see you again, you take care of yourself. Peace.